Welcome back to the Weekly Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Owen, and today I am super excited to be talking about week one of the XFL. I know everyone's podcasts and channels and things like that are going to be flooded with XFL content now that it's the only thing really going on outside of the draft, and it's just, new football content to talk about. So this isn't going to be any groundbreaking episode or anything like that, but I do believe I have some important things to talk about. I like my opinions on it. I overall just had a great week of watching football, both scouting college prospects while I watched the games and watching the games themselves. So I just want to dive into some of the different rules that I liked, some of the things I witnessed that I think the NFL should or should not adopt, and why that is. And then get into each game, just talk about like a player or two I thought really stood out on top, and just like the storylines that came out of this week of games. So off the bat, I want to talk about a couple of these different rules the XFL has implemented. And I think, to start off, a lot of people are conversing whether or not the NFL is going to adopt these things. And I personally think that there are some of them that they should, since they're working together, XFL and NFL is, to see how these rules will play in an actual game setting as opposed to theorizing how they would work and then trying to road test them out in the NFL itself, like it did the 1 year with the challenging of pass interference. That was a horrible miscalculation, and it was a good idea in practice, it was a good idea in thought, but in practice it did not go well. And now they have this kind of minor league system where they can implement these rules to try to see if they can make the game and product a little better. And if it succeeds on this lower level, then they can try testing it out at the higher level. But this is kind of like the testing grounds for those things. A couple of the rules I want to highlight is, first off, which was the most, the first one I want to talk about is the thing that I found most entertaining about the week was the ability to hear into and have full transparency when it came to the reviews from Dean Blandino and the referee crew. They have those gimmicks where they mic up the players and stuff. You can hear them throughout the game, especially the quarterbacks and some of the defenders. But I really think that the mics on the refs and the mics in the review room, as well as the cameras showing what they can see, it really helps show why some of these reviews take forever, shows what they're talking about, and really lead it. Like, yes, it's going to be putting refs in the position where they can't really say anything that they wouldn't want to be heard on live television. But, I mean, it's a professional. You're in your job. This is your job, is to referee these games or review these calls. If you're saying something or doing something while working that you wouldn't want everyone else to hear, then it probably shouldn't have been heard in the first place. So I kind of think that invading the privacy, I guess, of these refs and reviewers is not that big of an issue. And I haven't really seen it raised. I just thought that one, like, maybe that'd be a rebuttal to what you'd have to say for this stuff. But I really like the transparency of it. You have a lot of people who are like, oh, they're throwing this game for this team, or they're getting this team calls and such and such. If you can listen in and hear on every discussion, on every review, everything they talk about when it comes to making a call, it can kind of dead those rumors or those like things in the water logically. Now, there'll still be those people who are on the bad side of calls, they'll still say it, or who are just jaded fans. I think it goes a long way to quelling the outcry when there's bad calls, because like there's always those ones where, yeah, oh, the refs are playing for this team, and the Chiefs won the Super Bowl because of the refs, and et cetera, et cetera. But if you can hear how the refs are talking it out and explaining it, you'll hear it from that source. Then it'll make it more digestible, as opposed to seeing a flag get called, seeing a huddle of refs sitting there talking, then turning around and making a call that fucks over one team or the other. So I just like that full transparency, and that was my favorite thing that I think the NFL should 100%, no doubt in my mind, adopt almost immediately, as soon as next season probably. That's what I'd be pining for. I think that's kind of a long shot, but that was my favorite part of the whole week of games, or weekend of games, sorry. The other rule that I really enjoyed, that I don't think that's kind of controversial, and that I don't know if it's going to be, I'm not going to pine for it to be in the NFL next season like I did with the review thing, was the 4th and 15 option instead of the onside kick. Now, I think I've been seeing a lot of people get confused in how it worked. They didn't really see the qualifiers when it comes to it. It's not where you can just play keep away by just keep going in for 4th and 15s. And then, if you don't get it, now you're practicing red zone defense. Or if you get it, you're just playing keep away the entire game with another team that hasn't been able to stop your offense. It's only in fourth quarters when you're trailing, you can do it. If you're in the lead or it's ahead of the fourth quarter, you can't, if you want to go for an onside kick or maintain possession, you have to do the onside kick. So I think that's a great little nugget to add in there to prevent those kind of loopholes where you just play keep away the entire game and it's no longer football between two teams. It's one team trying not to beat itself. So I like that caveat. I think the 4th and 15, it makes it more exciting. A lot of times when you see an onside kick, it's already basically a foregone conclusion, like, okay, they're not recovering, start heading towards the exits, the game's over kind of thing. But with this 4th and 15, you're sitting there. You're going to keep more eyes on your product. There's going to be more of a chance for comebacks like we saw this weekend. Combining that with the 3-point system with the conversions, I'm not the biggest fan of that. I wasn't the biggest fan of the different levels of conversion. I think maybe it should be 2 and 3-point conversions, but the 1 point is still a kick. I didn't really like the fact that the 1 point wasn't a kick. It kind of made the kickers feel irrelevant. I also wasn't the biggest fan of the kickoffs themselves. I understand that you want to limit the amount of concussions, and kickoffs are like the number one for concussions, so I understand the way they did it. It just looked really awkward, and I think the Seattle Sea Dragons kind of figured out how to do the return towards the end of the week. They were the one team that really felt like they seemed comfortable doing those returns. But I think that they should, if the NFL is going to make a change to their kickoff rule, I think they should just go with the college format they have right now, which is if you kneel down or fair catch it within the 20 or within the 25, it counts as a touchback anywhere inside there, not just in the end zone. This will limit the amount of returns, and that will in turn limit the amount of concussions that happen. But at the same time, provides that same rough structure of a kickoff that some teams might still want to capitalize on and know how to perform right away instead of having to revamp the entire system. Just kind of more of a tweak there. So I think instead of that kickoff thing, the NFL should lead towards the college system. I think the 4th and 15 is a really great idea. Maybe it needs a couple more years in beta testing, or aka in the XFL, before it can be, fully released to the NFL. And I think the 3-point conversion thing, I think it's a cool idea, but it kind of messes with the whole structure of scoring. And that the 3-point I don't think should ever be in the NFL, but it's something that can be in these minor leagues to make it exciting. They make it like, it's not an alternative to the NFL because it's not running a direct competition, but it's a little bit of a spark. It's a little different flavor. We just went through however many months of NFL football. Now you're getting this more stylized, offensive-driven kind of football. So there's going to be a little more tweaks here or there to make more points possible, more comebacks, make it more interesting. So I think it's a good rule for a minor league like this or a semi-pro league like this, not a good rule for the NFL in general. So that's my opinion on some of the newer rules that we saw this weekend in the XFL games. Now we're going to jump into each of the games and break down, a player or two or some storylines coming out of the games that I really noticed or wanted to talk about. First up, we have the Vegas Vipers versus the Arlington Renegades. The Vipers were in control for most of this one, and then the Renegades came back off of 2 big interceptions and a fumble, scoring 15 points off of turnovers, including a pick 6 by, I believe it was Devontae Bosby, formerly of the Denver Broncos. He was somebody I highlighted when I went through and covered all the teams as like somebody I recognized and thought would have a good season in this semi-pro league. And so far, I've been proven correct. So I think he's a good one to highlight for the Renegades. They weren't really overall like great in any way, shape, or form when it comes to like the stat sheet. Drew Plitt, I didn't think was that great of a quarterback for this game. The rushing Devion Smith had some good ones, but he averaged 2.8 yards a carry. And there were some good rushing, performances this weekend, but this game did not, show either of them. Whereas the Vipers rushed 15 times for only 25 yards as a team. So I didn't really find that outstanding. Luis Perez is solid for a semi-pro guy, but he's a little too careless with the ball. I think you can definitely tell he's not a traditionally taught quarterback. He taught himself, played D2. He's going to be a guy that thrives in these semi-pro leagues or the CFL and these other areas where it's not the top of the top and you can get away with just being, a smart player who, doesn't traditionally know how to read good, like these more complex defenses, but it can show out against lesser competition. So Perez really kind of threw this game away from them, but he did have 3 touchdowns, 249 yards passing. I think the real storyline I want to talk about from the Vipers, though, is LaRon Stokes, because this was pretty much a defensive slog for the most part of it, with the Vipers jumping out to an early lead and then them shooting themselves in the foot to let them in. It wasn't really anything the Renegades offense did that really drove them to have this comeback. And one of the main parts is LaRon Stokes having 5.5 total tackles, 1.5 sacks, which accounted for 2 yards, and 3.5 tackles for loss. Like, they were controlling the line of scrimmage most of the game. The Vipers, like I said, had a big lead, and that's a lot of it was that they were controlling the line of scrimmage. It was unforced errors and some forced errors, I guess, with the fumble from the Vipers that really let the Renegades in here and let them win a game they really shouldn't have had any business winning. So I don't think the Vipers are a terrible team. I think they need to clean this up. And, traditionally the defense is usually ahead of the offense at this point, especially with how little practice time they've had. So the Vipers offense showing those flashes of being good bodes well for them when it gets later in the season. I personally think the Renegades have a lot more to go. And even though they won this game, I don't think they're the better team. I might even, that might be a fun thing I might record after this, is I might do an XFL power rankings. And I would probably keep the Vipers above the Renegades at this point, despite the win. But I don't know. If anyone listens to this, why don't you comment or, DM me on Twitter or tweet at me at the Weekly Huddle on Twitter. See if you'd be interested in a XFL power rankings video. And I'll probably put that out even regardless of some responses there. Next up, we have the team I handpicked to be my favorite team in this league, or this league year anyway, which is the Houston Roughnecks facing the Orlando Guardians. Guardians came into the league year having the lowest, or the highest chance of winning the whole thing, as in odds where they were the least likely. So the least likely odds to win the whole thing, the XFL championship, whatever they're calling it. Whereas the Roughnecks, I think, were top 2. And it really showed in this game. I was kind of surprised Silvers got the start for the Roughnecks, but after the way he played, I'm not totally shocked. He looked really good early. His late game picks kind of kept the Guardians in the game as much as they could be with how well the score was going. But I really think Caleb Elby should be able to have a chance to start somewhere around this season. I'm really excited to see him. Cole McDonald is used as like a Taysom Hill-esque running back quarterback, especially in the short yardage. That was kind of interesting to see. But the storyline I really want to focus on, and I kind of want to toot my own horn because this was one of my guys coming into this league year, one of the guys I trumpeted for when I found out he was going to be in it, and one of the guys that I tweeted about. The only time I tweeted during the games to talk about this was to tell them to feed my man Max Borghi the ball. I really liked Borghi coming out of Washington State. I thought he was limited, so I had him as a 6th-round pick. I thought he had some good skills, but would probably be more of a rotational back kind of guy, effective in the passing game and giving an offense some pop, some speed, more in an outside zone sense as opposed to being the power back. I thought he was pretty limited between the tackles. But in a league where he's going to be one of the better athletes and have that full of a skill set where he could be a running back and a true receiver, people were calling him discount Christian McCaffrey or Christian McCaffrey wearing a disguise. I think he really looked the part. And he had 8 carries for 42 yards, on top of 4 receptions for 32 yards, and a rushing touchdown. I think it was a 20-yard rushing touchdown, a long of 27 here, it's telling me. So yeah, I personally think Borghi is going to be probably the best, one of the best running backs. Him and Abram Smith are going to fight for that, even though Kalen Ballage did really good. I'm really high on Borghi for this league. I thought he should be on the NFL roster right now, or the entirety of last season, and it's kind of a shame that he wasn't. And just to point out for the Guardians, I don't really have anyone in particular I want to make mention of, because it was pretty much like a lost cause game after the first quarter. The one thing I do want to bring up is I could have sworn DeAndre Francois was a quarterback on this team. And once they benched Paxton Lynch, they brought out Quentin Dormady. I don't know where Francois is. I mean, Dormady outplayed Lynch. He had 2 more interceptions than Lynch did, or had 1 more interception than Lynch did. But he completed 12 of 18 as opposed to 15 of 21 for more yards, so a higher average. Same amount of touchdowns, 1 extra interception, a pretty deep pass. They were kind of harassed all game. I do want to bring up, again, going back to the Roughnecks, they had 7 sacks, 4 of which came from Trent Harris, who had 4 total tackles and 4 sacks, which is 4 tackles for loss. I don't know if they're counting all those together, the 4 tackles were 4 tackles for loss because there were 4 sacks, or if he had 16 total plays where he made impact plays on against the Guardians, but I'm not sure how they're calculating that for this on their XFL website. But yeah, the Roughnecks looked dominant, and the Guardians looked like the team that is least likely to win the championship, and there's not much more you can say about this game. This is the one, even though the Roughnecks are my team, the one I paid attention to the least, especially after that first half. Now this game, I was excited to watch it, and then I got all the way to about 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter after the San Antonio Brahmas went up 15-3 on the St. Louis Battlehawks and said, all right, I'm going to go use the bathroom. I'm not going to miss much anything. When I got back from the bathroom, It was then 15-13 or 15-12, and I was super confused on what I missed. A.J. McCarron looked sloppy all game until the fourth quarter. He's a great story. I really liked him with his kids there. The running game, I think the offensive line in general for both of these teams was atrocious, and I think these are going to be middle-of-the-pack teams because, as we get here with the Battlehawks, Austin Proehl, and they need to get my guy Hakeem Butler more touches. I don't know why he was out of the game for most of it until the fourth quarter. Conveniently enough, that's when they started scoring points. But I think with Proehl, Butler, McCarron, they'll be able to score some points, but the offensive line is really going to drag them back down, especially after they had their injury at right tackle. Austin Proehl was just fantastic. He was the guy who caught the 4th and 15. He caught the touchdown. He caught the 3-point conversion. He was just all over the place for them, and I kind of expected that from him. A former Buffalo Bill, played with A.J. McCarron on the Buffalo Bills that one year. They were both in the training camp, Josh Allen's rookie year. They have some chemistry there. Hakeem Butler, I'm hoping, can put together something. I was a big fan of his before I started really getting into scouting. He was one of the guys that kind of propelled me towards it. And yeah, Proehl returned a punt. He for 10 yards. He's all over the field playing special teams. I think he's one of those guys that maybe won't do as well in the league, even though he'll get a chance because of how good he played in like the semi-pro stuff, but will be a dominant semi-pro player. Maybe not, like I said, maybe won't transfer to playing in the NFL all that often or all that well, but at the same time, that's not really what we're talking about here. That's a question for the future. I think right now the storyline is going to be Proehl as one of the top receiving targets in the XFL that has Martavis Bryant and Josh Gordon and things like that. For the Brahmas, I think they actually controlled the ground game pretty well. 133 yards on 39 carries. I think 30.4 average isn't the best. And if they can maybe swing a trade for a lineman to try to recover, add on to that stuff. Because I'm pretty sure they lost a couple offensive line starters this game as well. And if they're going to want to play that pound the rock kind of play style, especially with the quarterback they have in Jack Cohn, they're going to need to increase the amount that the offensive line, the amount of talent the offensive line has. Nothing really else stands out besides how well Kalen Ballage, he leads in the league in rushing yards right now with 84. 24 carries, 3.5 average isn't the best, but he was playing against a tattered O-line. This game was just overall really kind of a slog. No one really gained traction until that incredible fourth quarter. There was a couple sacks given up. I think that's another thing is both these teams just have woeful offensive lines, which should be a trend throughout the entire league just due to the fact that they don't have a lot of time to practice. And even if you're showing a flash of competency at an offensive line position, you're going to get snatched up by the NFL to be a depth guy. So they're really working with the scraps of the scraps here for offensive linemen. And I kind of expect that to hold back a couple teams, and the teams that can get the trenches locked down are going to be the ones that are going to be good in this league no matter who they have at their skill positions. In our final game from Sunday night, the one I watched like literally every single snap of, which a couple these other games I missed like a snap here, a snap or a drive here or there. This one I watched every single snap/play. DC Defenders against Seattle Sea Dragons. It's in DC, throwing lemons on the field because they took away the beer snake. That was an awesome moment. I was kind of disappointed by Jordan Ta'amu, to be honest with you. I thought he would be able to show out a little more, 8 of 19 for 86 yards and an interception. Neither of the quarterbacks are sacked, so that bodes well for the offensive line of the Defenders here. I mean, Ta'amu did throw an interception, but it was more of just a really horrific throw by him as opposed to anything that really forced him to throw that ball up in the air. If I remember correctly, I know Danucci had a bad one as well. A couple bad ones. They really got the Defenders back in the game. They really they started utilizing Derek King more as a runner. Allowed him to get that rushing touchdown. Jordan Ta'amu was no slouch when it comes to running the ball either, but I think Derek King is going to see a lot more action as like a wildcat quarterback or an off-pace quarterback now. I was really disappointed in how Abram Smith played. I know the offensive line was good in pass pro, at least to the fact that they kept their quarterback off the stat sheet in the sack category. But Abram Smith kept getting caught in the backfield. When he was given room to rumble, he was able to. He's not, I never thought he'd be the most creative or explosive running back, but I thought his physicality would be able to really turn into something that like maybe a Kalen Ballage was doing or Jaquez Patrick for the Brahmas. How those guys are just bigger and built tough. They're able to run over some dudes. So I thought that would be the Abram Smith game. I was pretty anticipatory. I even called out in my betting game video, which I don't have up anymore. because not a single soul saw that thing. I call out Abram Smith as my MVP potential candidate, like a dark horse. After this game, not so much. I'm more inclined to say Max Borghi is than Abram Smith is. I think Smith can turn it around, though. He's another rookie, technically, for this league. I know everyone is, but he's out of college. I think he can get his rhythm down. They start defaulting him to be like the bell cow and kind of turn away from this passing attack that really did not do much for them in this game. Just got a shout out Michael Joseph, the corner. 5 total tackles, 2 interceptions, including one going back to the house, getting the defenders the lead. So that was just a good game for him. I don't think it was anything in particular he did that was outstanding. There was a bad read by DiNucci into cover 2 where he was just able to sit on the route. And it was he got the picks. I'm not going to take that away from him, but it wasn't like he gave outstanding individual effort that caused them to happen. It was a lot of DiNucci shooting himself in the foot. Speaking of the Sea Dragons, I personally thought their team looked the better team for 3/4 of this game, or maybe even 3.5 quarters worth. The Sea Dragons looked like the better team. DiNucci had 54 pass attempts I'm seeing here, and that's insane. But he had 282 yards, touchdown, and the 2 back-breaking interceptions. The defender's defense actually came out and looked pretty damn good. I know Greg Williams is kind of persona non grata among the NFL, but he knows how to coach a defense, especially at semi-pro. So once they started getting to DiNucci and shaking him, that's when they were able to turn the game around. So defenders might be a little bit of a dark horse championship team with that offensive line play and the defense if they can start to get Abram Smith rolling. Josh Gordon had a good game. He was getting doubled a lot. That first drive, he kind of got loose and got the touchdown. So they started really focusing him and took him away, which really opened up the person I wanted to talk about the single most out of this entire weekend, besides Max Borghi, which is Ja'Cour Pearson. Totally off my radar. Absolutely not even in a remote vicinity of who I knew this person to be. But apparently he runs a 4.2. He played at Ole Miss, didn't have a lot of production, which, at Ole Miss you either have a shit ton of production or absolutely none. Pearson happened to be one of the guys that had absolutely nothing. Even his most productive season, I think he had 300 yards. So, no idea who this guy was. Runs a 4.2 according to the commentators. Gets loose for 12 catches on 14 targets for 95 yards. I think with the fact that Josh Gordon is drawing so many double teams because he's that guy. He's big, he's fast, he's strong, he has the name recognition. They're going to focus him a lot more, and if you don't, he's going to punish you. He went for 6 for 74 and a touchdown this game. So, rightfully so, they're going to double up Josh Gordon. That's going to leave Ja'Cour Pearson open one-on-one coverage, run some crossers, just run away from dudes in man coverage. And he's not tiny. He's 5'9", yeah, but he's 190 pounds. You see guys like Wan'Dale Robinson and Rondale Moore, and even this year, Tank Dell, who are these smaller guys that play with speed, but they're 165, 170. And those are serious question marks. We have a 190-pound receiver here who can run the 4.2s and is going off for 12 and 95. As that number 2 deep threat role, I think he's going to really flourish and be the receiver. I know coming in, it was Martavis Bryant and Josh Gordon. We're getting all the headlines. I'm thinking with the attention Josh Gordon's going to deserve from defenses, I think Pearson might be the guy we're coming out hey, this guy is going to be on the NFL roster next year with that amount of speed and the production he's going to put up as that number 2 dude. So I actually have convinced myself I'm going to do the XFL Power Rankings after this. If you're interested in seeing that after you watch this, it'll probably be up tomorrow, Wednesday, the day before the Thursday games. I might even add a pick'em in there while I'm talking about it. We'll see. This is going to be more experimental. I'm just coming up with this off the cuff at the moment. But yeah, that's my review of all the games and all the storylines, how I felt about the rules. And if you are enjoying this, check out some of my draft content and look out for some more XFL content coming out. I'm going to be covering this league the entire season, especially once the draft is over. I'll be able to cover this league and the USFL at the same time. So look forward to that. I know I am, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.